This is the Blockchain Show.
Hello, and welcome to episode number 77. Today on the show, we have the CEO of Rivetz.
Welcome to the Blockchain Show. Thank you again for downloading. And today I've got joining me Mark. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Ian. Hello, Ethan. Hello, Stephen.
It's good to have you back. Now, before we start the podcast, Mark, what do you imagine our listeners are doing when they're listening to this podcast? Because I'm imagining they're driving home from work in their Audi A4 and it's silver.
I was cycling. I think I'm cycling around the streets of London on a fixie bike on the way to a coffee shop somewhere to pick up decaf soy macchiato.
Excellent. This is good. So if you are one of those people, please write in, give us some feedback, let us know you actually exist out there. That'd be good. On with the subject matter of the day. And for that, I will pass you over to Stephen, and he's going to introduce himself and tell us more about what he's doing with blockchain. Over to you, Stephen.
Oh, thank you very much, and thanks for having me. So my name is Stephen Sprague, and I'm CEO of Rivetz. Rivetz is a company that is building cybersecurity infrastructure for blockchain, primarily in the form of leveraging the existing hardware security that's already in your mobile devices, and eventually also within your PCs. And so inside the chips on your existing mobile device on Android is a hardware security capability that's embedded in the main processor. And what Rivetz does is we write an app that runs in that trusted execution environment. And that app provides protection of your private keys and the services that you connect to. Really, think of it as more than authentication. It's more about creating a secure message. And recently, we've done some interesting transactions. We have a relationship that we've announced with Telephonica, where we are actually extending our system to support a portion of your private key protected by the trusted execution environment, the chips in your manufactured device, as well as a portion of the private key protected within the SIM architecture from your carrier. And so in the case of UK, Telephonica is the owner of O2. This would provide an ability within your SIM architecture to protect a portion of the key. And so now what you have is two independent supply chains for the protection of your private key. So if the telco infrastructure screws up, you don't lose all your money. If the manufacturer infrastructure screws up, you don't lose all your money. I think you can almost think of it like having a treasure inside a ledger in the blockchain space. And so we think isolated roots of trust is a really interesting piece of the puzzle for this.
So the company is called Rivetz. How do we spell that?
Rivetz is spelled R-I-V-E-T-Z. And a rivet's a fun thing. A rivet is how you attach to similar materials. Like if you want to attach stainless steel to leather, you do it with a rivet. And a rivet has a unique property, which is it requires work to deform the rivet. And so every rivet is unique. You can break them without breaking the underlying materials. But when you put a new rivet in, it's always a unique binding.
The term riveting is something to express something that's highly interesting as well, which I think is also very applicable in this case.
Exactly. So we're here to provide you with some riveting news.
Absolutely. So, okay, I'm imagining our listener there is in the coffee shop and they can now go to your website, which is good. So fundamentally, you're telling us that our devices, our laptops and mobile phones have got security devices built into the chipset, which you're taking advantage of, are you saying?
Yeah, so we have like 750 million hardware wallets out right there. We just really need to turn them on. And so these are the hardware security that's already embedded within your phones. You're familiar with this from the technologies of an iPhone. Apple uses it for Apple Pay. Samsung uses it within the Samsung device for Samsung Pay. On the Android environment, we have the ability to write programs that run within that isolated execution environment. And so we're able to put code that runs completely independently of the operating system for the purposes of both protecting and managing your keys. And it's not sort of normal software, it's measured software in that execution environment. We can measure each of the steps from the original manufacturer keys all the way up through the loading environment, the operating system, and our application. And so we do that by doing a cryptographic measure and building a little chain of trust where each signature signs the next signature, kind of like a miniature little chain inside your device. And the hash at the top of that if it's the same hash today as it was yesterday, then that stack of software in my device has not changed. And so what we're able to do is take that measured compute environment and use it to store and process your keys, so we can give you all the tools of a very high assurance message, which is really what a blockchain transaction is, to the chain. These technologies were there not because of Bitcoin and blockchain, are there because of 20 years of building the foundations to secure e-commerce for payments around the world. And we're finally at a point where the technologies are programmable. Just when blockchain showed up, it's like, oh, we have just the thing to protect your private keys.
Yeah, and it's really, really fascinating way of looking at these things. And look at the Rivetz website, rivetz.com, and your white papers and your news articles around the relationship with Telephonica. And it is really fascinating. You're not a blockchain kind of company, really. You're not just a security company either. Nor are you an IoT only company or a payments company. You are looking at a strong security culture. I note, and you are you have the finger on the pulse of that past 20 years, as you say, of development in securing those payment streams and the way the web works. But then you're actually you're kind of taking blockchain is almost the missing piece of the puzzle to complete that picture, to use the technologies that they're in everyone's pockets or most people's pockets to complete that puzzle.
Correct. I mean, we spent many years building the keys side of this equation and building many of the use cases that today blockchain is pursuing, and blockchain companies are pursuing, but focused on, we've got all these great keys. But what we were missing was the tools and technology to manage all the keys. And public key infrastructure, or PKI, just was never up to the task. So now with blockchain, we have this great technology to manage all the keys. But what we're looking for is the containers to store them. So these two technologies were really built to be used together. And we're pleased to bring those parts and focus on how do we make this incredibly consumer simple. If I were to ask you, what's your favorite form of multi-factor authentication, people think of Google Authenticator or facial recognition or whatever. But in reality, the most common one is pushing the send button on your phone, which uses a multi-billion-dollar hardware infrastructure called a SIM chip to secure your phone. And it's so integrated and so seamless that you're just pushing the send button. Now, old people will tell you, well, we used to be able to dial the phone without a send button. You just dial the numbers and you got connected. So you got this stupid send button to connect. But actually nowadays, we're so familiar with it that it's just second nature. You dial the number and push send.
Call me stupid here, and I'm sure our listeners would love to do that. Why aren't companies doing this already? People like Apple, Android, with their security focus, especially Apple at the moment. Why aren't they doing this at the moment, and why haven't they come up with this idea?
So Apple does do it. This is how Apple secures the keychain within your device for Apple. So Apple uses it for Apple. They just don't make it available to all the other developers. In the case of Android, the tools have really just become available in the course of the last couple of years to make it work within apps. And I would tell you the vast majority of apps don't understand the role of the device because it hasn't been available in the past. So what you really want to do is move away from an app I download and then I connect because I type in username and password and then push the remember me button, which is not very safe. What you'd really like to do is a registration model where I download an app, I register it to a service, I have no credentials. My device owns and stores the credentials that log me into the services I belong to. And so at Rivetz, we believe not in your super phone, but that your collection of devices is your identity. So your phone, your spouse's phone, your kid's phones, your girlfriend's phone, whatever, those devices working together are how we will manage and protect your private keys in such a way that I don't want to write down 12 words every time I create a new key pair. Why can't my device talk to my other devices in my house securely and record my 12 words in a manner that is tamper resistant? Maybe it presents 6 words on my wife's phone and 6 words on my daughter's phone. I can go write those down in paper, but I never actually put all 12 words in one device, because if I put all 12 words in one device, you can steal them.
Yeah. And as long as your girlfriend's phone doesn't speak to your wife's phone, you're okay.
Yeah, exactly. Right. The delight is, of course, humans are complicated. So it's the collection of devices clearly is going to be more complicated because of social patterns. But But your collection of devices is an easier thing to think about and to manage as a consumer than, oh my God, I have a private key and I can never lose it. Like, we need to make these keys so they never get lost.
Now, something you touched on there, I think earlier in the conversation, Stephen, and you're referring to devices in that context as mainly smartphones here, but you also said kind of, this is coming into other devices as well, and is either already in other devices or will very soon have the capability in those other devices. And whether that is your laptop or your PC, or whether that is your smart oven or your smart refrigerator or your security camera that internet connected security camera, your smart Internet of Things devices. Can they play part of that, I guess, security persona that you use to build up with those different devices?
Very much so. And I think that it's actually really core to the future of where Rivetz heads in this, is that we think your device should have a source of funds that it uses to pay for services automatically. So let's just pick on your dishwasher, and you're not going to want your dishwasher to say, excuse me, I need 3 cents of iota. Can you get out your Trezor and unlock it for me? Because I need to talk to the refrigerator because I want to use the power grid tonight. Today we don't understand how automatic spend is going to work, because if I have automatic spend, then how do I prevent malware from automatically asking it to spend? And so what Rivetz provides is a wallet on a device that has money that can be an automatic source of funds for a device with a policy fence around it that's enforced by the trusted execution environment. You can think of it like a smart contract running inside your device. And so unlike a smart contract that runs on the Ethereum network where it's in the cloud, what we have is in essence the form of a smart contract type structure that runs within your device. So you can put rules attached to keys that the owner of the platform is the sole controller of. So you can say, okay, here's to my dishwasher, here's $3 worth of a token that's appropriate for the dishwasher tokens. And it's allowed to do the things that it's allowed to do because it's only authorized to spend at these 2 or 3 addresses. It can't just send the money to Russia unless you're buying Russian dishwasher soap, right? And so we actually think that network of devices need wallets. We need wallets for humans, but we also need wallets for devices. And we're going to want our devices to pay for things like cybersecurity controls, audits of devices, backup and recovery, attestation services across the network. And so ultimately where Rivetz token has value is that it's a store of value really designed to be device money with policy to pay for the cybersecurity services that you'd like to enroll your devices into.
And of course, that goes without saying that, when we get into the world of, autonomous vehicles that may also have their own wallets, and if we're ever going to get somewhere where an autonomous car vehicle wants to pay for its own licensing or parking or accident insurance, that also needs that element of security on top. Very much needs that element of security on top of that before people turn autonomous vehicles into offensive vehicles.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the only reason to own a self-driving Aston Martin is so you can send it out for pizza. I mean, why would you want to own one if you're not going to drive it?
Yeah.
Right. And so where's the source of money so it can, get to collect the pizza? Right. It's a fascinating concept of, what does it mean for things to have an allowance? And we're going to want our things to have an allowance because we don't want them to ask, think of a thing as like a really bad 5-year-old. It's like, Dad, can I have 5 cents, please? Like every time, no, you want to give them an allowance. So then they can decide how to spend their 5 cents, but only on things they're authorized to buy, not just anything.
We are starting to see the things where we have the devices in our pockets or we have them in our homes that have become smarter over time, and then we're actually beginning to use blockchain technology to complete those pieces of the puzzle. It's something that's been promised for numbers of years, a couple of years now, and this year, I think 2018, we're really starting to see those use cases being realized. So it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, and one of the other fun things we just did, we just finished the acquisition of a small company called Disk Holdings in the UK, which is actually an FCA approved payments company, and is currently running a mobile app that's hooked to DWP, so Department of Welfare and Pensions. So in essence, now when a welfare payment is made, it can be made directly to a mobile device, and we'll be adding the Rivetz security to that platform, which will give us a payments platform with world-class hardware security protecting the consumer's transaction. And our intent is to take those existing banking and payment rails and augment it with crypto. It already functions off of an existing blockchain-based back office, so it uses a blockchain-based ledger platform for the payments platform, or for the store of digital assets. And so we think that'll be a very interesting piece of the puzzle. So UK will actually be one of the interesting markets for us to develop those capabilities in, where we'll bring a mobile payments platform that works with government-based funding, but that also supports crypto. Because we think one of the real challenges in this space is, how's the consumer going to buy $2 worth of Rivetz for their devices? And so we're very focused on how do we help those platforms come into being that, a mass market, simple to use, funded by your credit card or bank account or other sources of funds or crypto, becomes a very simple way to acquire and deploy the necessary tokens that you need for all of your, for all the utility that you're going to have for these devices. So it's an interesting piece of our puzzle as well, adding into this, which is, how do we help the customer control a source of funds for a collection of devices, whether it's in Rivetz or in Ether or Bitcoin or dollars.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, as part of looking through your website and your white paper and your blogs and stuff like that, what I noticed is that you do have a very, I guess, mature partnership and acquisition kind of roadmap, and you've done a lot of work pulling that together, which maybe compared to some of the other blockchain organizations we've been speaking to is maybe not unique, but different and more mature. There's a lot of people thinking in their own silos, their own kind of vertical streams, trying to fix their individual problems with a blockchain solution. You've got quite a broad ecosystem already established. As you say, you're actively acquiring organizations to grow your portfolio. You also lean in quite heavily on that partner marketplace. Whether some of those partners turn into acquisitions at some point in time is an interesting thing. But you seem really on top of that ecosystem around Rivetz. It's making it I guess a greater sum of its parts.
Well, and we're a little bit of a sleeping player in the market. Me and my team come from years of working in the trusted computing space, where I was CEO of a publicly traded company for 15 plus years, raised $500 million to help launch trusted computing in the marketplace. And so I have a number of the core developers, both consulting and working for Rivetz, who are core developers in trusted computing. And so we're here to build the state of the art in how we protect your keys. And so therefore we can support really as many or all of the blockchain projects that are out there. What's important is when you look at a ledger, while you can store immutable data on the ledger, right? Everybody knows that. We can write something to a blockchain and it never changes. What we don't know is anything about the quality of the protection of the private key that wrote that data. And so the data that's written, we can't assert is necessarily good data. I can't prove your key wasn't protected. And so what Rivetz is bringing is that decentralized cybersecurity control layer that assures that this device in this condition with these controls wrote that data. And so we really believe that there's a second hash that belongs in almost every transaction, which is the quality of the data that's written to the blockchain. And it's really the quality of the protection of the private key. So we come from strong roots, and we've been trying to do this kind of stuff for a long time. We've done a lot of different types of business evolutions, shipped a lot of software in our lives. We were OEM supply to Dell, Acer, ASUS, Samsung, Intel, and others as a team back in the 2000s in the PC trusted computing space. So it's an interesting marketplace to develop. Blockchain is an incredibly important evolution in the marketplace and really shows us the foundations of what the new business model is, right? This is how all software and services are going to be paid for with crypto. And if a big company doesn't have a crypto project that's active in the plan for their economic model going forward, they'll get bypassed. we're shifting off of licensing and we're going to move to a microtransaction-based model, and it's all on crypto. And the mistake that's being made is we think it's a financial services model. It's not. Financial services is the demo. The real business model here is the global communications and software delivery network. And so those pieces are coming in place, but it's fascinating to watch all the wrong regulators are involved. This is a communications technology. It's not a finance technology.
Absolutely. So, Stephen, I've got my Aston Martin. It's not just a status symbol, and I do order pizza in it. But how do I get hold of your service, and how much is it going to cost me?
Yeah, are you just selling through partners? Are you selling direct to consumers?
So we'll do a little bit of both. Our primary business is to provide a toolkit to developers. That toolkit's going live this summer. It's been a little bit delayed from when we wanted to ship it. We had the opportunity to replace one of the core infrastructure pieces and only ship new stuff and not the old stuff. And we chose to do that, and it's taken us, I don't know, at least a couple months longer than we wanted to fully integrate it. But that technology will ship. Some people think in a couple of weeks. I think it's probably a couple of weeks more than a couple of weeks, but it's coming very soon. And that will allow any developer to add Rivetz to their project. We will also do some baseline services that we will ship. We're building a very simple chat client. We're doing some work on we have a very nice two-factor authenticator that would replace your Google Authenticator, where the seed keys are now held in hardware instead of in the software of your phone. So it's like having a YubiKey as a hardware two-factor authenticator, but embedded in your handset. And so we're building some of those basic pieces so that there is a very simple set of services that people want to try this and play with it. You can just go to the App Store, download an app, and begin to play. The primary business, however, is how do we supply the developer community with the tools? And then long term, we're trying to help set the distribution channel. So if we can enable, the global network of Telephonica, who have over 300 million active subscribers on mobile, with dual isolated roots of trust to protect your private keys, then as that technology rolls out, hopefully in 2019, we'll bring a collection of top tier blockchain services to it so that you have both pieces. 100 million hardware wallet capable phones with dual isolated roots of trust and 20 or 30 really cool services that people want to actually use, because that's what will make the real global network effect happen. We're here to go figure out how you get, everybody to have a hardware wallet.
Touching on the Telefonica piece, clearly that's another piece of your big news recently, that deal. How did that come about? Did they approach you? Did you bump into them at a trade show? How did that evolve? And do you think there are any other major corporate customers out there thinking along these lines?
Yeah, actually, they called us. So it was inbound from Telephonica, and we've had a great working relationship. It's taken us a year to put this transaction together and build the right pieces. We have teams, both of us, actively funded and working on the project today. We put press out so that we could communicate to third-party partners to come join the party. We had a grand old time running around Telephonica, running around Consensus together, talking to people about, is their project ready to go live and at scale? I don't know. The real challenge is what the consumer really wants is probably 250 million hardware wallets running CryptoKitties. Of course, the question is the blockchain really ready for that, right? So I think the challenge is going to be assembling all the parts in such a way that when a consumer doesn't know that much about blockchain, gets a phone that says, oh, look, it comes with some blockchain or crypto capabilities. What does that mean? And what can they actually use day one out of the box, right? And I think the right answer are things like digital identity and payments and global remittance and digital signing and health records and all those wonderful things. On the other side, it's probably the killer app is probably, Brazil betting against the UK on the World Cup 4 years from now. Right. You never really know, but keep in mind, they're all of South America, UK, Germany, and Spain. So yeah, World Cup betting, that'd be right on the top of the list of really fun things to build. So
we'll always be into a loser on that one.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But hey, so I think I think that becomes the really interesting question is, what really is going to be the set of applications that we all wake up one morning and use? And the mission here is to make sure we bring both the technology that protects the keys and makes consumers feel safe and have a simple experience. And I mean that in the broadest sense, right? Like today, if you wanted to just enable $3 worth of rivets on a single device and you don't know anything about crypto, you'll give up before you get there, right? By the time you go out and set up a Coinbase wallet, and then you got to go get some Bitcoin, and then you got to get an exchange, and then you got to put it on an exchange, you got to convert. It's like, oh my God, somebody shoot me, right? So we need a simpler path for that. And I think we're focused on how do we bring that simplicity, especially to the utility token market, so that the consumer can have access to all these incredible services that people are funding and building today that we all want to use. And let's make it simple. And I think we play our little role in the corner, helping that process along the way. How do we make it safer? How do you not lose your keys? How's it embedded in your handset so that you can just use it?
What are some issues that you might run into with fraud? I know that I'm pretty careful, but I've definitely lost a few cell phones in my life.
At the end of the day, it's about helping the consumer have a manageable experience. And so we think the answer to that is that your collection of devices is your identity and your store of keys, not your super phone. You should be able to lose your phone without any trouble at all and have your other devices. Maybe they're your friends, your parents, your children, whatever. Those other devices participate in the recovery of your keys. That doesn't mean they have your keys. It just means they can participate in the recovery of them. And so we're very focused on how do you prevent loss of the keys? Because much more Bitcoin is lost today because people lose control of an account than their account is stolen. The raw direct theft, how do I prevent the theft of a key? I think we can bring really great e-commerce capabilities that are unfamiliar to you. They're familiar, let's say, in bricks and mortar. You go and you slide your smart card into a payment terminal and it shows you the amount and you type in a PIN number. Those components don't exist for e-commerce, but that's what you have for a Trezor. And so we're bringing those PCI, those Payment Security Directive 2 capabilities up into mobile. That's actually one of the reasons why when we combine a mobile payments platform with Rivetz, we bring a European-wide Payment Security Directive 2 e-commerce capability unmatched by any of the banks today. So that simple model of how do I see what I sign? How do I collect secure user intent from the user, either in biometrics or a secure PIN, proper protection of the formation of the transaction, protection of the key and the message, and then some quality control or attestation that those other components are working correctly, we think is critical to making it work. So our job is to make that invisible for you. It really should just work in the same way that the send button just works on your phone.
It's brilliant. Has the GDPR in Europe affected any of your talks with these big companies?
No, I mean, I think we're a solution to GDPR. This is how I can have measured consent. This is how you can properly encrypt private information. It's how you can have provable cybersecurity controls on a blockchain. Trusted computing will play a very, very important role. I know a lot about GDPR. I'm probably partially responsible for the original ideas around it. We were building data encryption software and enterprise infrastructure in 2005 and 6 to protect encryption on hard drives. And we're very instrumental in talking to a lot of the regulatory bodies about what data protection rules and regulations should look like and be. So we were certainly part of the original formation of the ideas of it. And it turns out at the end of the day, what you don't want is a laptop that's encrypted. What you want is proof the laptop was encrypted when it was lost. And that turns out to be a little bit more complicated thing to deliver. These tools, like blockchain, like trusted computing, like measured control, these tools help deliver those capabilities. There's a lot of water to go under the dam in GDPR. The regulation is there. Now we have to kind of learn what does normal standard implementation of it look like, and that will take a few years to work out. A great opportunity for blockchain to deliver value and in the solution of GDPR and help protect people's privacy across the world.
I agree. That sounds like a really good use for it. What do you see the future bringing, Stephen?
So we're really excited to ship some stuff. Let's get the technology in the market. Let's show people how it can be used, and then hopefully adjust our plans to delight the customer. I mean, I would love to get to a point where we reduce our reliance on username and password, that we're here to simplify your experience with services and provide you with a safer web environment. And we also look forward, to really being one of the core flag bearers in what a utility token looks like and what it does. That the concept that software and services are paid for with tokens, that microtransaction model is the future of the delivery of software and service, and understanding what this new scarcity business model is. I think that's the part that's consistently lost, is what we really just learned is don't just sell an infinite amount of stuff, sell a finite amount of stuff, and then participate in the value of the growth of that ecosystem. And that's really what a token has the opportunity to do, is to have that participation in the growth of value of an ecosystem. So, at Rivetz, what we represent is the potential store and value for all devices on the planet to have an allowance. That'd be cool. We've got a lot of work to do to make that happen and to demonstrate that we're the company that will deliver that. I think we got a really solid foundation to start.
And when that does take off, Stephen, we want you to send us a photograph of your Aston Martin at the pizza shop.
Yeah, but you don't know the rest of the story, which is my dad was the guy who bought Aston Martin out of bankruptcy in 1977. You can look him up. Peter. Yeah, go to Sprague.com and the story of it is there. And so I do already own a DB5 convertible 1964.
You lucky
right-hand drive. I've had it since I was 21, so it's an old treasure.
Wow.
Fantastic.
That's a really, really fascinating and informative chat we've had with you, Stephen. But time is passing, and I think we only had half an hour of your valuable time. I guess final words from me, and I'll pass it around to Ian and Ethan to have their little say. But as I mentioned earlier, your website is really good, really informative, and I could quite happily spend a couple of hours browsing through your white papers, your partner lists, your press releases. You've been pretty active on that news and press release trail. So it's good to see there's a lot going on in Rivetz world. So I would encourage our listeners to pay your site a visit, to get their head around what you're doing and who you're doing things with. A final thanks for me for a really interesting chat, riveting chat, no doubt.
Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Have a lovely day.
And you. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen.
Bye.
Take care.
Are you looking for an easy way to buy Bitcoin or Ether on a safe, secure platform? Coinbase is the easiest place to buy and sell digital currencies. Sign up today as a friend of the Blockchain Show, and if you buy or sell $100 of Bitcoin or more, you'll earn $10 of free Bitcoin for yourself and $10 of Bitcoin to support this show. Join now using the link in this episode's show notes at theblockchainshow.com. To learn more, visit theblockchainshow.com.